Hello everyone and welcome to the latest CySec webinar. Before we begin, just a few quick housekeeping points. This session is being recorded today and will be shared with our members and attendees. So if you need to step away from today's session, you can catch up later. The recording should be available within 5 to 7 working days. To minimise background noise, all attendees are muted, but we do encourage interaction through the Q&A feature at the top. So feel free to submit questions at any time and we'll aim to answer them during the dedicated Q&A session at the end of the session. If you experience any technical issues today, please try refreshing your browser or reconnecting. Alternatively, use the chat function for assistance and I'll look to support where possible. And that's it for me. I'm now going to hand you over to my colleague Connor, who will be chairing today's event.
Lovely. Thanks, Dom, and welcome everyone. Thank you for coming along. We thought it'd be a good opportunity to do a webinar on professional registration because the appetite we found over the past sort of 6 months or so has really skyrocketed. So we thought it'd be good to get a few speakers on, which we're very grateful to have. So we've got Sonia from Cybersecurity Council. We'll discuss sort of what they've been up to and the direction they're looking to be going in the near future. We've got one of our more experienced assessors and interviewers, Ian, who will give sort of an assessor's point of view with regards to applying for professional registration. So what makes a successful application. We've also got Craig, who's recently come on board as an assessor, but has also been a successful applicant through the chartering process. And Craig will give some tips and some advice on also sort of what makes a successful application, but from an applicant's point of view. And as Dom said, we've got a section for the Q&A towards the end. So just before I do hand over to Sonia, just a quick note on sort of the specialisms available currently and what CySec are licensed to do. So we've been on board as a licensing body with the council for over a year now. We came on sort of tail end of 2023. And the specialisms that are currently live are governance and risk management, audit and assurance, architecture, security testing, incident response, and secure operations. The top 3 that are in bold there are what we are licensed to do. And the bottom 3 are shared between CREST and the cyber scheme. So after this session, if one of the bottom 3 is something that you're interested in, please reach out to us or even to Sonia, and we can make the introductions for you to the relevant people. And just a quick touch on the registration levels that you can apply for. So there's associate, practitioner, principal, and chartership. Associate is sort of targeted more towards people with more knowledge and understanding and ready to start using that within a cyber role. Practitioner, you'd be at practitioner level, so you've got a couple of years experience under the belt. Principal, you'd be looking more towards sort of being an expert within your specialism, and likewise with chartership, you'd be an expert, but you'd also be expected to have quite a vast knowledge in other specialisms as well. So that's enough from me. I'm now going to hand over to Sonia, who will share her screen and go through her slides. So Sonia, over to you.
Fantastic, thank you, Connor. Let's get technology working. Is that all okay? Fantastic, thank you. Yeah, so great to be here today. Thanks for the invite, Connor. So I'm Sonia, Head of Professionalisation at the UK Cybersecurity Council. I've been at the council for coming up to 3 years now, so I've been on a lot of the journey with the council as we look to develop these specialisms, embed the professional standard and work with the industry to really start to reap the benefits of professionalisation. My slides are going to go over a bit of an overview of where we are today, and then the key focuses for the council as we move into this next financial year, what we are looking to achieve throughout that. There we are. So the council was established we were stood up in 2021, and we were established by the UK government to support the cybersecurity strategy. Initially, our key visions and our key aim was to embed professionalisation, to make sure we're looking at career routes into cybersecurity and understanding kind of how to engage with that professional registration market. We're now looking for our longer term vision as we move into the kind of next stage of development. We are clear that the council registration needs to be seen as the marker of quality and trust within the sector. That's how people gain that confidence and understanding that actually these individuals have the required competencies at the required level. We've set an ambitious vision of all cybersecurity professionals council registered, and it's through working with licensed bodies, engaging in webinars like this, that we can start to expand that and spread the word further. It's really, really key to us that the profession broadly feels understood and is supported by the council. So we are here to represent the cybersecurity profession, and we need to do that by engaging with the sector. So it is key to us that there are opportunities for people to feed back to people, for people to understand, and that we can do that both on an individual level, individual registrants, but also collectively working with organisations, working through licensed bodies to ensure that understanding. As Connor mentioned, we've got the 4 professional titles now, and that was expanded at the end of last year, October last year. We repositioned the associate title so that that was an entry-level professional title for people either ready to start their first role in cybersecurity or in their first role, to start in their first role in cybersecurity. One of our key visions is that individuals at any stage of their career can see their path into and through the profession. So really adding structure and supporting people on that development path. And key for a lot of the work that people do, and a lot of the work we do with government, is that organisations know how to create a cybersecurity first environment in which professionals can thrive and deliver highly effective cyber resilience. And this touches on things like getting people into the profession, but also how do we maintain and retain those people within the profession as well, making sure that it's a profession that delivers for the individuals as well as the economy as well as security. This is a quick snapshot, and I hope it's not too blurry on screen, of where we are with the different specialisms and licensed bodies. So as Connor mentioned, we've got 6 specialisms currently live. We've got governance and risk, secure system architecture and design, audit and assurance, security testing, secure ops, and incident response. The practitioner was added in, as I said, end of last year. So that's why that blue coming soon is still on secure system architecture and design, but we hope that will be up and running with practitioner very soon. Just to note, the associate title, that is a broad professional title. It is not specialism specific, and that's because we understand that actually to enter the world of cybersecurity, you need that broad underpinning knowledge before you can go on and specialise in your career. Someone described it to me once as a cyber career being kind of an egg timer, where you start out broad, you then specialise as you go through your kind of career development, and then when you get to the pinnacle of your career, you need to kind of broaden that knowledge again. And I think that's really useful to think of as we look at professional titles and the competencies that we require as well. Just to note on the specialisms coming soon, so we have secure system development. That's currently in pilot with the IET and BCS. Those pilots are coming to an end, and we hope that within Q1 of next financial year, we'll be in a position to launch that specialism. We also have cyber management. Now that is a bit of a different specialism to the other specialisms. We understand that it's really, really needed within the sector. What we want to do before we kind of launch it as a full specialism is to understand exactly the scope and exactly the requirements for cybersecurity management. And as such, we're doing a bit of an extended pilot with this. What we don't want it to become is a dumping ground for anyone that isn't quite sure where they fit, so we'll go in cybersecurity management. It has distinct value and distinct purpose, so we want to make sure that's cemented, and then obviously we'll roll that out. Just to mention as well, it's not officially in the timeline, but we have begun discussions around an OT specialism, whether that is a standalone specialism or whether it's something that needs factoring in within existing specialisms, or both. So we've got a key group of kind of OT specialists to start and support that discussion for us. So nothing officially in the pipeline, but we are starting those conversations. The key here at the bottom just shows which licensed bodies we have offering which specialisms. So it's fair to say today the council have been focused on developing. We've developed the professional standard, we've developed the specialisms, working really closely with our licensed bodies. We've rolled these out through pilots and testing. We're really keen now to move from that kind of initial development phase into BAU. So what you'll see there from the initial 8 specialisms is we're not rushing into going, okay, next we'll stand up these 4 or these 4. Actually, it's time for us to take a little step back and go, okay, this is where we are. What can we learn? What feedback are we getting? How are we looking at this? What is needed next? So it's not that we won't develop more specialisms, it's that we're just taking that step back, bit of a breath to go, okay, what next? As part of this, it's really, really critical that we assess quality in what we have already delivered, and we build into that quality assurance and improvement frameworks. We need to ensure that even the things that are live within the sector are as good as they can be, and continually learn and review and enhance those. Obviously working in partnership with licensed bodies to develop and deliver this, and it's really important to engage with the community. Are the professional titles delivering what they need to do? Are there improvements that could be made? What impact are we seeing from that? So that is a key factor as we move forwards. Just to touch on some of our work across government and regulators. So we are partly funded by DCIT. They were the kind of home department for us as we were established, and we still work incredibly closely both with DCIT and with NCSC. Last financial year, DCIT provided a professionalisation fund, essentially to fund government workers and civil servants through professional titles. And that's really helping with embedding the professional titles within the civil service and across government. And it is absolutely fantastic to see that DCIT and government are not just paying lip service and yes, we'll set up the council, we'll do this. They see the real value that embedding professional titles gives to the work of government. Closely linked to that, we're working with the government security profession, and we're mapping the specialisms and the professional titles into the GSP framework. And I think this is really key to make sure that actually the professional titles and specialisms aren't separate to a lot of existing frameworks. It's understanding how we build that in, we embed and we work with frameworks and skills frameworks that already exist. We have worked with Crown Commercial Services to ensure that, again, the registration titles are embedded within government procurement. So we are understanding and helping the buying chain understand where these professional titles add value throughout there. We've worked with DWP and their Security Academy. Their Security Academy looks to take non-cyber professionals into a cybersecurity training scheme, essentially, and then deploy them across government. So we've been working with them to ensure that actually that can align to our associate title, understanding that, yes, there's the technical competencies, but also ensuring that those B2E competencies are fulfilled throughout training schemes, and anywhere that needs additional thought is considered. We have NCSC assurance schemes, so there's a number of NCSC schemes that point to our professional registration titles as kind of the people requirements for that scheme. So we work really closely with NCSC on that and engage with the community through them as well. We received the commitment from regulators about 18 months ago now to recognise the council standard across regulated industries as a benchmark for cybersecurity practice. Now, we continue to work really closely with regulators. There's more work to do, looking at how we embed, looking at how we encourage adoption across there. But that commitment is really a fantastic sign to the sectors that actually, yes, this is the standard of competence that is expected. And more. So we have ongoing work to embed the titles across sectors. So that's not just with government. We work with individual organisations. We work with specific sectors within that to look at how we embed and promote these titles to encourage that adoption. We also have a lot of work looking at certifications, qualifications, employer schemes, and everything else. So we know that trying to get into cybersecurity, there's a lot of schemes, and how do you know which route to take? We know that once you're in cybersecurity, there's a lot of certifications, there's a lot of qualifications, which is the best. We've got employer schemes, we've got other schemes. So we have been developing a process to start to map those schemes to our professional titles, looking at if competencies can be assured through any of these schemes. For me, there's clear benefits across the board. So for the end user, for the professional, if they've got 5 certifications, and through those certifications, we can understand, even if a handful of competencies are assured, that then makes the application and assessment process potentially a lighter touch or an easier process. For employers, for people looking at how to develop, it means actually you can look at where specific things add benefits and help individuals progress within their development journey. We've been trialling this process with a number of organisations since last summer, and that's coming to the end of the trial period now. We do want to continue this because there is clear benefit of undertaking this. So we'll be planning out shortly how and where we focus and prioritise with the mapping. And just to mention, there is obviously a quality assurance process within this. We have mapping assessor panels, which are made up of experts looking at any mapping that is undertaken and subsequently approved. So looking at the application within industry, what we see as really valuable is embedding and promoting these titles, and we can really start to identify where the key areas are that cyber roles are critical. And we know this is vast. I was going to say broad, I think it's more than that. It's vast, but understanding exactly where those cyber roles are critical. There's the opportunity to map cyber roles and career routes so we can start to standardise. Now, this isn't about putting people in boxes. We know that people need the freedom and the ability to develop their career to suit their needs, to suit their ambition. But it's about adding some structure to that. So adding the supporting structure without restricting movement, without restricting development. Being able to align high standards across the sector, and that is across government and private sector, so we can understand what that mobility looks like. We've been talking to government about the opportunity of kind of secondments in and out of government, and actually that really opens up once we've got a framework and a structure that works across the sector. A couple of good news things to finish on as well. So recently we have launched our Cyber Access Network. Now the aim of this is to empower and support the next generation of cybersecurity professionals. We know, and I'm sure a lot of the people on the call today understand that it's really hard to know how to get into cybersecurity. We have a skills gap, and we hear so many reports about we have skills gaps here, and here. But when I go to a careers event, I have a queue out of the door of people saying, okay, but how do I get into cybersecurity? And I think that's something as a sector we really need to address, and we really need to start adding support in there. Our Cyber Access Network is aimed at those who aren't at associate yet. It's aimed at those who are looking to get into their cybersecurity journey, whether that's students from school or whether it's career changes from existing careers into a cybersecurity career. The network aims to offer networking opportunities, webinars, events, signpost existing things. So this isn't all stuff we have to provide or create ourselves. If there are things licensed bodies are offering, if there are things that the community want to kind of engage, absolutely include those, and looking at articles and supporting knowledge gaps as well. We launched this 2 weeks ago, and we've already got 500 people signed up, and I think that really demonstrates the need of some support in this area. So that's something we're looking to grow, work with employers, work with licensed bodies, work with the sector to really add support into this area. We also have our wonderful youth advisory panel. We launched this last year, and we've just recruited individuals for this year. It's critical to the council that if we are creating the profession of the future, we have to embed future professionals within the decisions. Now, this isn't just them feeding into career routes into cybersecurity. This is a picture of them meeting our board last year, because actually the board really value that we need to, if we're developing these things, we need to engage, embed, understand a range of voices from across the profession and future professionals as well. So they will continue to work with us and support us and develop the work that we do. Final mention, there's lots of opportunities to get involved with the council if you wish to. Number one, professional registration. Absolutely run a webinar to discuss that. If you aren't sure, obviously you can reach out to Connor through SciSec. You can communicate with the council. If you're not sure which specialism or which route to go down, please do reach out, because I know we're all really happy to have the conversations. It can still be a complex area, so any unsurety, please do reach out. We offer events and webinars as well. We've got a couple of webinars on specialisms up on our website at the moment, and we welcome volunteers. There's opportunities for registrants to volunteer as well, obviously through licensed bodies. We have different volunteering groups as well, so if you did want to get involved with the council, there's always the opportunity. And I do want to mention we have an open call for trustees at the moment, so if anybody knows, or anybody knows of it, anybody that knows of anybody who might be interested, there's a lot of information on our website, so do have a look at that as well. And I think that's me at time, so that is my last slide. Excellent timing. I'll be on, so if there's any questions at the end, happy to pick those up.
Sonia, thank you very much. It's very exciting to see what you guys have been working on and what's to come. Some really good stuff there. So I am conscious that we are quite tight on time, so I shan't hesitate in introducing our next speaker, Ian, who's coming at this with his assessor interviewer hat on, and Ian has a wealth of experience in both. So Ian, yeah, over to you.
Thank you, Connor. I'll just get this. Can you see that okay? Is that working?
Yeah, all good.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, so this keeps popping up. Give me 1 second. Yeah, so what makes a successful application? So this is really looking at this from this assessor's perspective. So I've worked with both SciSec and with the UK CSC for a good couple of years now, been quite involved in the development of governance and risk, and also the audit and assurance frameworks that came out for this as well. So, and I've been assessing pretty much since I was chartered in both of those specialisms as well. So hopefully this will give you a bit of a flavour for what this looks like from the assessor side and what we look for, and maybe give you some pointers and some tips on what good looks like. So firstly, quick agenda. So we're gonna touch on picking on the right specialism as well, but also picking a level as well, because that can be quite an important thing, but especially between principal, chartered, and whatnot. We're going to talk about some of the core things around completing the form, because that's the entry point into this. We're going to talk a little bit about demonstrating competence at interview, and we're also going to cover over some common issues and practical tips as well, because there's a lot of things that we see that people make similar mistakes. So if we can jump ahead of that and get people to not do them, then that's going to be beneficial for everybody. So as we've seen on a couple of the slides already so far, there's quite a few specialisms out there. And one of the things I wanted to pick up from an assessor's perspective is sometimes it can be quite difficult to pick what the right specialism is for you. And a good example of this is you've got governance and risk management, and you've got audit and assurance as two separate specialisms, whereas a lot of people work in GRC roles, which would probably span over both of these specialist areas. So, you know, these are the conversations that people are having, and they're thinking about, you know, how this works, how this comes together, and where that best fit is. So if your role's primarily, you know, more on the audit side, then it might be a better choice to go down that track. Same if it's more risk focused, you know, but having these conversations with people is absolutely key and critical. So you can sort of see a little bit on here, you know, in regards to some of the specialist areas and where things are and what's going on there. But also, as we've seen this as well, you know, going through these levels and building up on these things, principal and chartered tend to be the main one where people are really kind of sat in that middle post between those two of going, you know, am I at that chartered level yet? Is it more of a principal sort of role that I'm doing? And sometimes, you know, it can be really subjective because of everyone's roles are different, everyone's experience is different, everyone's qualifications are different. So it really plays on the importance of looking at things like the contextualization documents and really getting a firm understanding of what the requirements are at each of the levels and how all of that stacks up and works. So when we look at the form, some of the things that we don't see is sometimes people even forget to highlight what specialism it is that they actually want to apply for. You know, it's simple, straightforward things like that we would want to see, but also as well to avoid repetition. So if you're providing your CV and it's got all of your qualifications in it and it's got all of your certifications that you've done as well, you don't need to. That's really winding me up that it keeps popping. Can you see that pop up on the screen? No, okay. Yeah, so if you've got these things on your CV, you can also just mark these as please see CV. It says this on the application form itself, and it means that you don't need to copy and paste your entire CV out across into the form itself. So that's a good time saver for people as well. A really important thing is referencing the STAR format for the evidence that you provide as well when you're going through all of the required areas. So thinking about the situation, the task, the action and the result. So going through those things in that level of detail, what was going on, what were you tasked to do, what actions did you actually do, and the so what, the result off the back of that as well. And when you're looking at the evidence that you provide as well, make sure that the evidence is specific to the specialism that you're applying for as well. I've seen some fantastic evidence being submitted, and then you look and go, but this is a governance and risk application, but that evidence is very clearly a security operations piece of evidence. So it's a fantastic, they've done a fantastic thing, but sometimes you can really struggle linking that back to the specialism, which is really important. And also very helpfully, there's a checklist at the end of the application form as well. You use it, utilize it. It gives you the tick boxes. It'll ask you things like, have you got copies of all the certificates that you've claimed in the application? Have you covered off all of the points? Have you put your referees on there? All of these kind of things. So just following it through and using it as a checklist is going to be really helpful there for people. And one of the other really important things as well is understanding the difference in some of the core wording in the contextualization document. So you can see at the bottom of this slide here, this is from the UK CSE contextualization for governance and risk specialism. And what you'll see there is on the left-hand side, you've got the requirement there for principal. And on the right-hand side, you've got the requirement there for the chartered status. And what you can see there is, the ability to elicit security requirements versus the ability to elicit complicated, non-obvious security requirements. So you can see how it kind of builds from the principal status up into the chartered status as well. So that's a really important thing to think about as well, not just for as you're doing this, but with the evidence. And when you think about, am I best fitting in a principal role versus a chartered role, and where should I aim my application for? So having a look through these contextualization documents is really, really important and really helpful, because you can really think about those things. So if you don't work on highly complicated and non-obvious security requirements, you've got to think, well, actually, am I more aligned to the principal status, and it's something I can work on further to go from principal to chartered. And as we come into the competence interview sort of stage of this, once that application form's gone in, one of the things that's really important, and I noticed there were some references to, to sort of banding back into things like SFIA and whatnot. So this is how these things fit and align to some of the default standards, if you will. So at a principal level, you're looking at around a level 6, and for a chartered, you're looking at level 7. So a level 6 is the sort of last year of a bachelor's degree, and a level 7 is going to be a master's degree. I know the CISSP qualification is held at level 7 as well. So from an equivalency and from a balance perspective, that's kind of where you're expecting to be, both in regards to your form, but also in regards to talking at interview as well. So when you're providing evidence, you're building on your examples. That's the level of information and output that we would be expecting from people. And just a kind of a few points on here as well. Make sure that you're really clear on what evidence that you provided, and review this before you come through into interview. What we do tend to see is, a lot of people will fill out the form, and then when they get to interview, you can see that they're sort of, trying to readjust themselves back into what information it was provided. So putting that prep in can be really helpful for your interview when you sort of get to that stage. Common questions that will be asked are going to be things along the lines of expanding on evidence. So you could say, for requirement A1, that's a really good piece of it. Can you just expand on that a little bit and talk to me about the complexity in that answer? Or can you show me how that particular piece of evidence that you provided was more complex than the standard one, for example? Those kind of things. If you can think about that and prep for that before the interview, that will put you in a really good place as well. And it's not just about technical skill either. You know, this is not just about the, you know, the firewalls and routers. This is about your communication and interpersonal skills as well. So how do you deal with other people? You know, do you talk to non-technical staff? How do you align your wording, your presentation style? All of these things are gonna carry good weight at interview. And also think about the levels that you've applied for as well. And we've kind of touched on this a little bit already, but if you're looking at complex examples, can you build on that when you're in an interview as well? Because that's something that will, you know, that's something that's really going to give an extra level of depth to your application. And then sort of going on to sort of common issues, and I've done red and green here because it makes the most sense, it's clearest. So a lot of people don't use the STAR format when they're providing their evidence, and this not necessarily can be a problem, but it sort of takes away from the process of doing this. So if you've got some strong STAR-based evidence, you know what you're going to get. You understand that you're going to set the scene. You're going to talk about your actions, and you're going to say about how that resulted, or you know what was the outcome from that. Using that really helps, and it's a strong process to use. The second piece on here is evidence that is not specific to the specialism. So we touched on an example around security operations versus governance and risk. Think about that when you're looking at what evidence you want to submit, and also what examples you might give at interview as well. Are they supportive of the specialism that you're applying for? And also the old classic and favourite I versus we. So we'll see a lot of this in applications where people will say, we did this, we did that. This is your application, this is your chartership. We want to understand what you did. So a follow-up question to that will be, that's great, but what specific actions did you do in that particular piece of evidence there, if it's framed as a we kind of piece of evidence? And looking at things to the kind of the practical tip side and the positive side of this is the contextualization documents have got a lot of keywords. You know, we've picked up on things like complex, non-obvious, and things like that. They're really helpful in shaping your evidence, both at the application form level and also at the interview stage as well. If you can answer those and be really clear and concise on why the example that you've given is complex or non-standard or anything like that, whatever it says in that contextualization, that's really going to help you and put you in good stead. But also think about, you know, preempt what's going to happen. You're going to fill out an application form. You're going to go to an interview if the application's at the right level. Build on that evidence to strengthen your position. So be really clear about the evidence that you provide in your form, and then think about how you can build on that. You can support that at the interview level as well. So when people ask you questions, oh, just tell me a little bit more about that. You're there with it. You're ready to go, and you can provide that deeper level, which will really kind of help your your application and the process. But also as well, you know, a lot of people don't touch on the things that they do outside of their roles as well. You know, a lot of people, like we're all talking today now, you know, this is something that we all do. We are volunteering to do this. We're volunteers as assessors. Think about things that you do as well in regards to maybe extracurricular activities. Are you engaged in institutes, you know, other kind of bits and pieces of work that might support your application for chartership as well? Because there's a lot in there, and a big part of not just the UK CSC and CISEC, but also the cybersecurity profession full stop, is about helping others, giving back, and working together. So, you know, if you've got good examples of that as well, that's something else that's really helpful for your application. And that is everything I have, Connor.
Perfect. We're sticking on time perfectly here. Thank you very much, Ian. I think you really addressed a lot of the issues that people come across there. I can echo firsthand that I've had numerous conversations where people are a bit like, I don't know what specialism to apply for. I don't know what level to apply for. I'd just like to say the council's documentation, the SPCC and the contextualised standard are the main two that I refer people to go and have a look at. Are there to help you to make these decisions. So please do have a look through and have a read before you do make a decision on what you're going to apply for. But last but certainly not least, I'm going to hand over to Craig, who's going to come in as an applicant point of view, who's recently gone through the process as a chartered professional. So Craig, over to you.
Thanks, Connor, and thanks everybody. Nice to be here sharing some insights with you. As Connor said, I'm going to sort of share more of an applicant's view of the process, which for me started sort of midway through last year. I promise Ian and I didn't sit together when we wrote our slides, so you are going to see a few common themes. I guess, you know, to start with the process, and this isn't very sort of in the sense of professional giving my bio, but what I wanted to do, I guess, is contextualize some of the information that I'm going to be sharing through some of the subsequent slides. You know, my background is very much in sort of CNI cybersecurity, having spent, you know, a lot of time across sort of CNI organisations and looking at, you know, particularly payment ecosystems. And I think, you know, when you consider which specialism I went to professional registration for, so audit and assurance. I'm currently going through the process of risk management and governance as well. I think, you know, what I was looking for specifically out of this might be different to what you're looking for out of it. But fundamentally, I think if I build on sort of why I looked at professional registration, the primary one I think you'll all hopefully connect with a little bit is career development. So, you know, Sonia was talking a little bit about some of the schemes and how they tie in quite closely with some of the other industry bodies such as the NCSC, having spent, you know, a significant amount of time working across CNI sectors with competent authorities and operators of essential services. This is by far becoming sort of one of the more mandatory requirements for providing consultancy, advice and guidance into those sectors, but also for some of the more formal things around things like the cyber resilience audit scheme from the NCSC and you know, having mandated professional registrations and titles as part of the process for adhering to that scheme guidance. I think alongside that, there's also sort of progression in line with peers. You know, having been sort of in several different consultancy organisations and built up a network of peers, you know, this is very much something that multiple peers within both the sector that I work within and sort of within the client environments that I work within is definitely becoming one of those things that people are trying to push forwards with. But I think it also gave me the opportunity to contribute more to industry development, looking very much at the pathways on that final point there and the skills, sort of where is professional registration going to take people, and I started that process of thinking, where is it going to take me? You know, what can I achieve through professional registration? I guess the second part of that, as again, you know, is validation. You know, how I apply practical knowledge, you know, actually starting to validate a little bit more about that experience that I've gained in different roles and working with different clients in you know, multiple different sectors. But, you know, very much a credibility element here. You know, it was nice sort of Ian looking at the various levels and picking which level is more suitable. And I think, you know, that level of validation for both your skills and knowledge and providing that credibility to some of those schemes that I mentioned a minute ago is really important and certainly was important to me personally. But I think applying it a little bit more to my day to day, it's a little bit about leading and mentoring as well. You know, making sure that you know, Sonia and Ian both mentioned kind of bringing through the next level of cybersecurity consultants and you know, particularly in my industry, but also looking at how clients are developing themselves and where we can start to actually practice what we preach. You know, thinking a little bit more about these industry standards as a common baseline of understanding, but also of how we apply cybersecurity within, you know, our various industries as well. So a really key part for me. But I guess the more important thing for me is the insurance element. I'm fortunate enough to sit on the NCSC assured service provider scheme. I look after that for Bridewell, and I am a registered head consultant and team leader for various parts of that scheme, and ultimately this is a mandatory requirement. So part of my professional registration or need for that was driven by mandatory requirements, which, you know, I think are a really positive thing. it gives assurance on both sides of the fence. Not only are people engaging with individuals and professionals that have been through that process of validating their practical knowledge and credibility, but they're also looking at developing their careers and developing their knowledge and contribution back to the industry, which hopefully should provide a much more meaningful service and deliver a lot more capability for organisations that are looking for it. So again, the three key headers there for me are career development and development in myself, validation of my knowledge and some credibility of my skills and how that's sort of been applied and that experience I've gained, but ultimately the assurance element and the need to demonstrate that assurance to hold particular roles with specifically the NCSC. So what was my experience of the registration process? For anybody that's been through any other professional registration, it is fairly typical. There's an application process, which, as Ian was talking about, involves completing a form. It goes through a panel-led review, goes to interview, if particularly at the higher level specialisms, and ultimately ends with a committee review or a panel review of the findings, and hopefully at the end of that process an award. But I found overall the application process was quite straightforward. Can be quite lengthy. I spent a lot of time thinking about how to sort of structure and frame my application. One of the things that I don't see mentioned all that often is that there are a couple of different approaches to that. You can either apply for each area of competence individually, so in sort of more of the tabular layout, or you can incorporate those into a couple of case studies where you obviously articulate and demonstrate that experience. And I think it's really important, as Ian was saying, to think about which approach is right for you and for the specialism and level that you're applying for. Once you have got through that application process and you've documented your application in whatever chosen format, the actual review process can take some time. I joined the registration process fairly early on, which meant that I waited probably a little bit longer for my application to be reviewed. But embrace your interview preparation time. Nobody likes presenting themselves. I certainly don't. I don't find it natural talking about how good I am in certain areas, or indeed how not so good I am in certain areas. But I think what I found is that adding more detail to my application helped me to focus the interview conversation and validate, as Ian was saying, a little bit more of that knowledge and experience in line with the evidence that I provided. And I can definitely attest that the types of question routes that Ian was talking about are very valid. But there is limited feedback from the submission of your application, and unless more information is required, either because you're bridging that kind of principal and chartered level, or indeed because it's taking a little bit more experience or reframing of your application form before it goes for interview. But be patient. There are a lot, I know from experience in the process. It is something to try and balance, because if you look to my next point there, I felt that I over prepared for my interview. I, as I just mentioned, don't perform particularly well in interview. At least I don't feel like that, which led me to forget some of my key achievements, which is fundamentally what you don't want to do. So focus on what demonstrates competence for your chosen specialism. I absolutely agree with that, particularly for competence A and B, those areas where you're providing evidence, where you're looking to contextualize your experience and really try and make the best impression of what you've learned and how you've applied it. But I mean, overall, I enjoyed the discussion during my interview. It wasn't, I think people maybe would interpret it more as a sort of mastermind kind of approach. It really isn't. It's a discussion. The assessors will have seen your application, they'll have read through carefully. Again, I know from experience, reading through that application, picking out the kind of lines of sort of where to explore and how to build upon that application are done before the interview. But the breadth and the depth were both very manageable, and we did use the full time allocation, which was a couple of hours of discussion. So be prepared, but don't try and over prepare for it. Treat it as an opportunity to demonstrate or bring to life what you've got within your application, and use the experience of the assessors as well, because it can lead to some really interesting conversation. So I guess advice and tips. So if we were thinking sort of good cop, bad cop, this is where I guess I'm here to try and help you to get the most out of the process and your application as well. But understand where your key strengths are for the chosen specialism. Focus on how you add value. The interview is not about, if I take audit and assurance, it's not about how do you deliver an audit, it's how do you deliver a successful outcome, how do you empower other people, how do you communicate. Fully agree that interpersonal skills here are really important, particularly at the higher professional titles. So make sure before you approach this, you have a really good understanding of where your focus is, and what makes you different. What are your key strengths, and how do you really bring those to life in your application? And make sure you prepare. There are application, there are a couple of different processes for how you apply. The key one for me is investing your time in documenting your experience across all of the competence areas. It allows you time to think about how you structure the application. Pick it up, put it down, think a little bit about how you turn experience or something that you've done into something meaningful to other people. Don't forget the assessors are going to be looking at your experience blind, so bring it to life. Make sure that you've got good evidence to support. Think about the nuances of your application, not just the straightforward things. So not every situation or task has an obvious outcome, and don't be afraid to express those outcomes. So put the thought into preparing, because it really will make the difference to you. But be confident, whether it's choosing your examples, whether it is articulating your experience, be clear and be confident. You need to ensure that those assessors understand what you've done, what your role in it was, so that the I versus we that Ian mentioned, but be confident in communicating what you've done. Those are achievements that you're looking to demonstrate that you meet the requirement for whatever level of professional registration you're going for, and just make sure that you clearly get that across, whilst also trying to listen and interpret the questions that the assessors are giving you as well. Pick your examples. I pulled out STAR again. I didn't specifically call out the STAR within my responses, but I definitely aligned my examples to that. Try and avoid waffling. You get plenty of opportunity once you've gone through the application process to build on your experience and the evidence that you provide, but do make sure that they're aligned to the specialism you're applying for, and remember that it does extend beyond what you do as a day-to-day job. Anything you have around developing others or within the industry are particularly important for the higher professional titles, so make sure that you've worked those into your response as well. Try and summarise. Conversations can go off on tangents. Again, I know that from experience. So be sure to summarise your response to the original questions. Make sure those are clear, and ask questions. I did find the assessors to be incredibly knowledgeable, as you'd expect, provided an opportunity to create some really interesting discussion. It isn't that sort of question time that I mentioned earlier. It very much is a two-way conversation. So make sure you embrace that as part of the process as well. And it goes without saying, on that confidence point, be assured, be confident. So finally, I want to talk a little bit just about the benefits. Having been in the cybersecurity space for a couple of decades now, I found it personally to provide opportunities to further my personal knowledge and career, as well as sort of allowing me to give back to the industry. And I think that starts with that credibility, very much having the ability to demonstrate knowledge and make sure that I'm seen within the sectors that I work within as a credible individual was really important for me, and I am seeing that benefit from having the professional title that goes with my experience. it's nice to see that everybody has been compared against a common baseline, and compared maybe not the right word, but when we're talking about specialisms and we're talking about the levels, they are common for everybody. It doesn't mean you all meet them in the same way, but it does mean that if somebody has achieved chartered or principal, or are a bit earlier on in their career, you can obviously structure more of your conversation around that common baseline and ensure that you're driving in the same direction. But that's given me the ability to enhance the capability around me. I have the opportunity to actually sponsor the pathways and things for professional registrations here at Bridewell, which has left me, talking to lots of our own teams, but also within sort of clients and other sectors and just contacts really about how they can best achieve that kind of capability and what's best for them. And I'd echo the point made earlier that if you do have questions, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. More than happy to answer any questions. But this is all about enhancing capability for me at my sort of point of my career, and that's given me some new opportunities. Both in assessing, but also in contributing, particularly to things like this. It's great to share knowledge, and the point was made earlier about building the cybersecurity capability, and I think that's vitally important in any line of work. It also allowed me personally to refine some of the team dynamics. So think about mentoring, think about how driving people towards professional registrations and those standards from the UK Cybersecurity Council help me get the best out of the teams that I manage and that I work with. And finally, new interest groups, being part of groups that are talking about, changes and evolutions within the sectors, but also within the professional titles and professional registration as well, has been really beneficial for me personally. So open your eyes to the other things in sort of how you can learn and contribute as well is probably my best advice. But I'll leave it there because I think I'm at time as well. So it's been really great to share some insights with you, and thank you for your time.
Great, thank you very much. I know you've addressed a few questions that we get asked all the time. So why should I do this? Why should I apply for professional registration? I think you covered off that fantastically well. So thank you very much, and likewise to Sonia and Ian. Thank you both so much as well. So we've got 8 minutes left, so I'm going to head over to the Q&A section. So what have we got first? Would CySec membership automatically trigger the registration with the UK Cybersecurity Council? So no, it wouldn't. Holding certain levels of CySec membership is a prerequisite to apply for professional registration currently. So you'd need to hold certain levels of membership in order to apply, but it wouldn't automatically get you professionally registered. Next question is probably for you, Sonia. How would an educational body become licensed?
So if an organisation, educational or otherwise, would like to open up a conversation about licensed body, I would say drop me an email. I can put my email in the chat. Happy to do that. We work really closely with our licensed bodies. We want to make sure that there are a diverse range of routes that work for the sector. So we would explore that with you, look at kind of the requirements we would have, and then take it from there.
Great, thank you. I think the next one's also probably going to be for you, Sonia. The next two kind of tie into one. The question is, I was wondering if the mapping would include the Sophia and government digital and data profession capability frameworks. Ideally, absolutely yes, I think is my answer to that. We know that, and we work really closely with Sophia, and we have started to look at mapping there, and same with the DDAP frameworks. What we have to do is we have to look at the mapping initially that has the biggest impact for the sector, because we're a small team, looking at where to prioritise first, I would say. The end goal is that we have mapping that makes all of the frameworks work together and makes everything understandable together. So there is huge benefit for that. What we're doing is we're chipping away, looking at where we have the biggest impact, and then we can broaden that as well. So yes, not immediately is the answer, but it is all in the long-term plan. Great, thank you very much, Sonia. Next one is, how does one attain certification through ISC2? I would assume you'd have to reach out to them, unless you've got something else to add to that, Sonia.
No, licensed bodies, as I said, they all offer individual routes to registration. So if you feel the ISC2 route is best for you, I would say contact ISC2 as a licensed body. You can also, there's a method through our website, you can put down an expression of interest for different titles that can come through to us, and we can direct you to the right place if that is easier for you to do. I'll put that link in the chat as well.
Lovely. Will this just be a UK-centric scheme, or will it become worldwide?
I'll take that one, Swan.
Yes, please.
We work really closely with international schemes, is what I would say. We are the first, the council are the first organisation in the world to be able to offer chartership within cybersecurity. Other countries and other nations are hot on our heels and very interested with what we're doing here. So there have been conversations led by DCIT at an international kind of summit last year, looking at the international relationships, and it picks up on that framework point as well. Can we make it work with NICE and NIST? Can we look at what they're doing in Singapore, in Australia, in a number of different regions? Are there equivalences? It's not something we can automatically say, oh yes, so we've got this, that equates to that, because actually we have taken a lot of time and effort to ensure that the levels and the titles and the competencies within the professional standard are exactly right for what we require within the UK. So there are international conversations that I think will continue to develop and evolve over the coming years.
Thanks, Sonia. I'm gonna give you a little break and throw the next one to well, actually, I think Craig and Ian, it'd be good to get an assessor and an applicant point of view on this one, because it is quite a hot question that we get a lot. Is how does one sort of fill in the application when A, security clearance is a factor, and B, obviously a lot of the work that they're doing, they can't go into huge detail. How would they still go about getting across the evidence they need without going into such detail?
Do you want me to go first on the assessor view?
Yeah, go for it, Ian.
Okay, so this is a really common thing. This happens all the time. People talk about it all the time as well. A lot of people in the assessment panel and the volunteers as well also hold clearance. They're aware of what this looks like. The guidance on this is, you should be able to give enough without breaching any kind of classification issues, any kind of security clearance levels, problems. We don't want that much detail from you from that perspective. Think about the evidence that you provided. Also be really clear with the assessor as well, and say, look, a lot of the work that I do is currently under XYZ clearance, or I work with certain clients that we can't go into detail on, and they will tailor that experience around that as well. That a lot of them are very experienced, a lot of them hold very deep clearance as well, so it doesn't tend to be an issue. But I can understand how it can be a concern from an application point, which is the segue to Craig.
Thanks, Ian. Yeah, I did just see the point about need to know, and obviously I grew up through holding clearance, so some of the examples that I gave in my application were covered by clearance. So I think the best advice to give it is probably to generalize those as far as possible, in the sense of not just anonymizing, but maybe just pulling out the key points that you want to get across through your application, and how it maybe meets the specialism, the area of competence that you're looking to demonstrate. I don't think it should be a barrier. I certainly didn't find it to be a barrier, and I didn't have any conversation with assessors that needed any particular level of clearance. There wasn't that level of probing. I think providing you're sensible with what information you share, and how you maybe think to put that across, that the actual evidence that supports that doesn't need to be papers that you've written that hold particular clearance or anything like that, as Ian was saying. So I think so long as you're sensible, that shouldn't be a massive issue. There is absolutely an understanding that some of this experience, particularly when you look at some of the DCIT sponsorship, that there are going to be a lot of people applying through sort of government entities and government departments that that are going to maybe come across this. But I think realistically, you can provide as much information as you think is viable without breaching any confidentiality, but also, you know, be distinct. Make sure that you're only using things that do support your application.
Great, thank you. I think that's really helpful, and hopefully that's answered the question asked. I'm conscious we haven't got much time left at all, so I'm going to try and rattle through a couple of quick ones. We have any CPD point? Yes. So annually, you need to submit. If you come through SciSec, you need to submit 25 hours annually. I know, Sonia, correct me if I'm wrong. It's 75 hours over the 3 years that needs to be covered. SciSec's way of doing that is annually, so it'd be 25 hours annually. If you're an associate of SciSec, you can. So how do you apply? I popped my email address in the chat, Anna. If you want to drop me an email, I'm more than happy to advise you on the next steps. And this is probably going to be the last one that we have a chance to. We will answer all of them, but this is probably the last one we'll be able to get to on the call. Someone's just completed a master's in cybersecurity. What level would you expect them to sort of be applying for? Ian, I know you touched on sort of the different levels available. I'm not sure if you'd like to pick this one up quickly.
Yeah, it's one of those things. The academic side is very much one sort of side of the triangle, if you will. You've got your other experience, you've got your professional qualifications, and all of these things kind of factor in to what the level is. So I don't think there's a particularly, there's not, you've done a master's, therefore you're at level 2. I don't think that's the case in these things. I think you've got to consider it in a much wider context than that. So it's definitely a good thing to have, and it definitely helps the application. But I think when you start looking at the STAR evidence and how that supports some of the points, you can build a credible chartership application without a master's, but it can be incredibly helpful if you've got one too. So hopefully that helps.
Great, thanks, Ian. And I'm afraid that's all we're going to have time for in the Q&A. Like I said, we will answer all the questions and we'll get back to you. It might just be in slightly slower time. But just before we do end things, on behalf of SciSec and everyone attending this call, I'd like to say a huge thank you to our 3 speakers, Ian, Sonia and Craig. You've all been exceptionally informative and very helpful, and I'm sure people will take a lot away from this session. So just like to say thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks,
and on that note,
thank you.
My pleasure. Our pleasure. On that note, thank you everyone for attending. I hope you've enjoyed it and it's been a worthwhile session. And I think we'll end it there. Thank you all very much.